Kase, who is behind the camera, and I have quite a fun video for you right now because we have the refreshed 2025 Ram Heavy Duty Power Wagon and Ram Heavy Duty Rebel Cummins doing a little bit of off-roading in Arizona. The first obstacle at this little articulation place where we could show you how the suspension compares between the Power Wagon and the Heavy Duty Rebel. I have front stabilizer bar disconnected, and this has a unique suspension that Ram calls Articulink. So if I can just go like this.
Nice, here, pause there. So you've got your front tire pretty nicely tucked there.
Okay.
If I come around to the side, where we can see how much drop we've got on this side, as well your rear end is pretty tucked, and you have your wheel lifted in this back corner just a little bit. Might come up a little bit further.
Okay. Can you see, is it like 6 inches, or what do you think? How far is it?
Yeah, I would say you're spot on, Andre. I would say you're probably about 6 inches off the ground now. But the articulation's looking good.
And it's, of course, super important to keep all 4 wheels on the ground as much as possible, because that's how you get traction. As soon as your tires or 2 tires are in the air, it's going to be more difficult for you to make progress, or you're going to be chewing up your spinning tires. You're going to be chewing up the terrain, which you don't want to do. Now I want to see Kase do the same obstacle in the Cummins diesel-powered HD Rebel, which has a different suspension system, and there's of course pros and cons to everything. So I want to see how Kase manages this climb. Hey Kase, I hear a nice clatter coming from your truck.
Real nice, Andre. That is why I picked this truck.
Oh boy.
Yep. And it's also in the same color as my Cummins, so that's pretty good. Now, I've got absolutely nothing special engaged. I am in 4-wheel drive. We're gonna see how this articulates by comparison from Andre's Power Wagon with the sway bar disconnect. Is it pretty good?
It's pretty good. Hold up. I think it's about a foot, maybe a foot and a half.
Okay, which makes sense because we wouldn't expect to see as much articulation here on the Rebel as
How much do you think this is? How much distance?
I would probably say, yeah, you got about a foot.
About a foot.
A little bit more. If you go forward a couple of more inches.
Let's see.
There you go. A little bit more.
There you go. So up almost your knee, below your knee.
Yeah, that's not any more than a foot. That's 2 feet almost.
All right, dude, keep going.
So that is a really good side-by-side comparison to be able to see the difference in articulation between this Rebel and the more aggressive Power Wagon off-road package.
The Rebel, the heavy-duty Rebel you're seeing here, has air suspension or the bags in the rear. So, and that of course helps with load carrying, leveling yourself out with a trailer, but not necessarily helping you off-road. Although, still very capable truck because the tires are great and it's going on the same trail. For 2025, the bones of the Power Wagon remain the same, which means it's the same chassis, it's a crew cab, it's got the same suspension and tire package. In this case, it's this beautiful, I think, 17-inch wheel wrapped in this Goodyear Wrangler Duratrack tire. It's Snow Peak 3-speak rated M&S 285/70 R17, which means it's about 32.6 inch diameter. So it's still basically a 33-inch tall tire. But this Power Wagon is dressed up a little bit because we've got these rock rails, little side step. It's got, of course, it's a Power Wagon, so it's got a lot of skid plates. It's got rear locker, front locker, special Articulink suspension case, so you can kind of see this arrangement in the front, and a disconnectable front sway bar to boot. So it still has those good bones, and a Hemi V8 under the hood. And of course a worn winch. I mean, this wouldn't be a Power Wagon from the factory. It comes with a winch.
Now, of course, knowing me, I had to go for the diesel to pay homage to my Cummins that lives back at home in Colorado, and this is the HD Rebel. So I've got similar tires to what Andre has, do have Goodyear Wranglers here, and really the only area where I've got a leg up is the fact that I've got about an inch more in diameter, so this tire is closer to a 34. However, this is a 20-inch wheel, so I do wish that it had a 17 like what Andre's got there on the Power Wagon. I also have some Bilstein shocks here, but I don't have quite as many of the features for off-roading that Andre has. I don't have a winch up front, and I do actually have power steps on this unit, but since right now we're in 4 low, they are disabled, which is a good thing. Under the hood of the Rebel, though, is the main reason that I picked this truck and jumped in it before Andre could, because we've got the new updated 6.7 Cummins, 430 horsepower, 1,075 pound-feet of torque, and of course the new 8-speed ZF transmission that we're all very excited about.
There's no question about it. Both of these trucks are heavy duty and they're big, physically big, but the wheelbase on both the Power Wagon and the HD Rebel are about 149 inches. These are both crew cab trucks, which is actually a little bit less than some other competitors from Ford and General Motors. This Power Wagon has a beautiful interior though. I mean, it has all the luxurious options, and I'm still in 4 high. And sometimes it's tight. You have to make adjustments. I'm gonna put my wheel on the rear, on the rock here, kind of go over it, because we're using every inch of this trail, and we have to because these trucks are big and wide. But no problem for the Power Wagon, just perfect amount of traction. Not even using lockers, because really we're not experiencing some super hard climbs right now. So that was no big deal, but it always helps to have a spotter, a helper, or maybe be in a convoy like we are right now with Kase, because we want to make sure that we're not scratching anything, not damaging anything, and still having fun.
Now I want to show something here from my perspective. Looking out of the front of this truck, the visibility is not very good, so I'm using my front camera here, which is pretty helpful. I don't usually like to rely on camera systems. However, it is a challenge to see out of this truck, and that's partly because of this hood bulge. Some of the other truck models don't have as pronounced of a bulge in the center of the hood, but this particular hood design with all of these vents and everything does. So the cameras end up being actually pretty useful, because from where I'm sitting, that big rock to my front left, completely obscured. So thankfully, I have cameras and I have a spotter at the bottom of the hill to make things a little bit easier. Because, yeah, from my view, it looks like I'm going straight into this rock wall. I'm basically only going off of what my spotter is telling me right now. So I cannot see very much at all, although in my mirrors I can catch a little bit of what the rear tire is doing, which is nice. I do love the mirrors on these trucks, but I wish the forward visibility was better. I mean, there's not any HD truck on the market that doesn't have a big hood that blocks a lot of your view, but this hood bulge on the Cummins is especially pronounced. It's the same there on the Power Wagon, and I wish I could see a little bit better, but we do have quite a bit of clearance in these trucks. So in general, there's quite a bit that you can just drive over and not worry too much about.
While the chassis and the powertrain remain the same, the interior is freshened up, and this is really a premium version of the Power Wagon here. I have a gigantic 14.5-inch vertical display. I've got all my cameras available to me right now. I have my trailer brake controller, and you can kind of see some of my controls here in the lower portion. And this is quite familiar. I still have a volume knob, tuning knob. I have some hard buttons on the side, and I think really nicely dressed up. I even have a passenger screen here on the passenger side, and I have a column shift. So all 2025 Ram heavy duties now have a column shift, because no matter which powertrain you get or which configuration, it's the same, and I love that. And here are my four-wheel drive controls. I have for high, for low. I have my disconnectable front anti-sway bar button right there. I have rear and front and rear locking differentials all in the same controller. So I don't have to, well, actually I don't have a lever anymore that I go clunk, clunk, clunk. But there's still a Tradesman crew cab 4x4 Power Wagon available. So if you want to bring the price down, that truck starts at around 64,000 bucks as a Tradesman with a simple interior. But you could step up to this nice one as well. And with a lot of these options, you could see the final sticker price on this Power Wagon Hemi is $88,550. That includes $1995 destination. Power sunroof is $1195. I've got Power Wagon Level 2 equipment group for $84.95. I've got tow haul mode with digital mirror. That's $1135. Safety group $1995. This has almost every option available on the Power Wagon.
Like Andre's truck, this particular Rebel is very heavily optioned. So we also have the big screen here in this model. And that means that some of our primary switches for tow haul mode, for the exhaust brake, which I do like having, are built into the screen rather than hard buttons like they are on some different models. I do kind of like the hard buttons more than these integrated into the screen switches. But we've still got physical brake controller like what Andre has, and then my four-wheel drive area here with two-wheel drive, 4 high, 4 low, and my rear locker is not quite as populated as Andre's because I don't have a sway bar disconnect and I don't have a front locker. I only have this rear locker. But you have to look at as well the price on this truck, and you have to brace yourself because this is a diesel. The Cummins option is just over $12,000. So the base price on this truck is $68,000, but with all the options, it's $99,000.
Whoa.
And yeah, I mean, there's a few different expensive things. Level 2 Rebel Level 2 equipment group is $6,500, but the Cummins option at $12,595 is definitely the really big expense here.
And you have Ram box in the back. I mean, this truck is fully equipped as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a sunroof over top, and I do have the Ram boxes in the rear, which is also not something that I would spec if I were speccing out a truck for myself. But like you, I've got the passenger screen and the big front screen, so there's a lot here. Now, Andre, here's one nice thing. I do have 1,849 pounds of payload on this truck, which is not a ton for an HD truck,
no,
but it is going to be more than what you've got.
I have just over 1,200 pounds of payload on the Power Wagon, and payload and towing ability of the Power Wagon were always kind of the downsides. I mean, that suspension is purely meant, I mean, it's really focused on off-roading. The HD Rebel is nice because you do have more payload, especially with the gas engine, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot more towing capability. The Power Wagon is rated at about 10,500 pounds. This can go up to like 18 or 1,000 pounds or so on these HD Rebels. So if you want to combine affordability with utility, the HD Rebel is better at that.
Yeah, both of them are certainly compromised in their payload and their towing a little bit as well because of the off-road gear that we've got on these trucks, but the Power Wagon especially so.
What's wrong with these Ram boxes, Case? Come on.
Well, swing it closed real quick.
You could put your golf clubs in here.
Sure, the golf clubs I don't own. But if we look into the bed, Andre, look at how narrow it is.
Well, that's still 4 feet wide. You can put your 4x8 sheets in here.
I know, I just don't think that I would make the sacrifice.
So with this Power Wagon, it's still the same engine. It's a 6.4 liter Hemi V8. The power rating is a little bit different for 2025. It's just due to emissions and other small changes. It's 405 horsepower, which is still competitive in the world of heavy duty trucks, and 429 pound-feet of torque. That's the same torque number. If you look at GM, for example, their gas V8, the 6.6 liter, has 401 horsepower, but more torque than this. Ford has two gas V8 options, including a 6.8 and a 7.3. They have more horsepower options and a little bit more, actually a lot more torque options as well. Okay, so if Nathan was here, and of course we do miss Nathan, he would yell out, "Power Wagon don't care!" And actually it doesn't, because it has a lot of clearance, and a ledge like this, I can go very, very slowly in four-wheel drive low, maintain contact with the ground because of my articulation, and make it look as if I'm at the mall, just driving around on a Sunday afternoon.
So I am first going to pull up to this. I'm in low range, but I don't have my locker engaged. I've got, of course, my camera pulled up, and I will be keeping an eye on my spotter, because once again, difficult to see. Now, one thing that I do appreciate in this updated Cummins is that it seems like this truck has a much smoother throttle engagement in low range, because the previous generation truck, one that we owned as a company vehicle, could be a little difficult to use the throttle smoothly on when it was in low range. This one feels much better.
Kase.
Did you back up into the cactus? Andre is making friends with the local flora. Andre, what are you doing?
So Kase, on that last climb, it seems like you had to use a little bit of traction control there to get you over the top.
Yeah, I definitely don't have some of the same articulation that you've got there in the Power Wagon. So that's all things that we would expect, because obviously the Power Wagon is a more aggressive off-road trim.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we saw there is your engine is a bit heavier than mine, right? So the front end, you kind of had to bump it a little bit to climb over that little ledge. I don't want to say the Power Wagon is lightweight, but it's a little lighter than your Cummins.
Absolutely, but one thing that I do appreciate now getting behind the wheel of this truck on this first drive event, you remember how our company truck, our company Cummins, could be a little jerky in low range?
Yeah, I remember.
This truck, the throttle feels much smoother than it did in that generation, so that I appreciate about it.
You know what that might be? It's actually the new transmission, right? The 8-speed ZF it's got a really low first gear. It's a 471-to-1, and with your transfer case being what, a 264-to-1, you actually have a good crawl ratio.
Yeah, and the truck is starting me out in second gear, even here in low range as we're crawling uphill, which makes sense because first gear in low range would be an extremely low gearing, even though we've got a 342 rear end ratio. The nice thing about these trucks is they do have quite a bit of clearance, so really there's a lot of things that you can pretty easily drive over. Andre, I think if I were shopping for one of these trucks for myself, I do like the Cummins Rebel because the diesel option, very nice to have, very helpful. However, if this was my personal truck that I was driving, I would be seeking out a set of 17-inch wheels like what you've got there on the Power Wagon, and I might even bump up the tire size to a 35.
Yeah, I mean, you'll already have almost a 34, so going to a 35 would make a lot of sense. And getting a little bit more clearance and a little bit more sidewall in your tire, I think would be quite a smart thing to do.
Of course, both of these trucks are HDs. They're going to ride a little bit stiffer than some other smaller off-road trucks out there on the market, but definitely a little extra sidewall would be nice as far as the ride quality off-road is concerned.
Absolutely, dude. Well, as we wrap up this trail run, once again, I want to thank Ram, because They kind of set up this event, this demonstration, and provided the trucks. So that's very nice. I also want to mention that I've never been here before, so it's always great to have Onyx off-road maps, because in an area like this, there are many little side trails that you could take, and it's very easy to get lost. So Onyx off-road maps, it's an app on your phone. It connects to your truck via Apple CarPlay, and you could just plan your trip and never get lost.
Now, after getting to see how both of these trucks perform with a little bit of light off-roading, what's your takeaway?
Well, first of all, I'm still happy to see that Power Wagon is still here. It's being offered. You can have many luxury features added to it if you want to, or you don't have to. Like I said before, you can get a tradesman Power Wagon package at around $64,000, maybe, give and take. So I'm happy about that, but I would like to see Ram push the envelope a bit more, because the Power Wagon is a little bit long in the tooth. Also, the HD Rebel could have a little bit more options, like different tire packages. So I kind of want to see Ram push it a little bit more, because there's now the heavy duty, super duty Tremor. There is the Silverado heavy duty ZR2 Bison. Those trucks are on 35s with steel bumpers and also locking differentials, at least in the rear. So I want to see Ram step up again and go even higher.
Absolutely, and there's a few things that I understand, not being able to necessarily stick the Cummins right on top of the Power Wagon suspension, because that suspension is set up for the gas V8, but there are still other features they could add to this truck, like having a front locker, and that alone would make a huge difference to this Rebel trim, or if they wanted to call it something different, if Ram could offer a diesel with a selectable front and rear locker, that alone would be a really big deal.
Like 10 years ago, the Power Wagon was kind of by itself as a production heavy-duty off-road spec, very capable truck, but it's no longer alone. Competitors have come in and they've added, very capable choices as well. So I think Ram, Power Wagon, and HD Rebel can step up a little bit higher. But I'm quite happy. I mean, we didn't do crazy off-roading today, but the performance of these trucks is still quite nice.
And of course, at the end of the day, these are still HD trucks. They are still primarily for towing and hauling. It's still nice to have a little bit of that dual capability, especially because for an application like what we use our trucks for in Colorado, we need to be able to do a little bit of trail running, and we need to be able to pull a trailer. And having the option to do both is really nice. So we like these off-road HD trims a lot, but a little bit of extra capability, I agree, would be nice.
All right, dude. Well, I had a lot of fun, so let's sign off, and I guess we'll see you next time.
You guys love car and trucks? Well, I've got 3 great podcasts that you will enjoy listening to, because we are deep into cars and trucks. And talking about trucks, right here is my man Andre and Kase working on the next episode of Talking Trucks, where they delve deep into everything that is truckish, including breaking truck news, talking about the different models that are coming up, and of course, tearing down the world of trucks as only Andre and Kase know how to do. But if trucks are not your thing and cars are sort of your thing, check out Carish, our podcast that is sort of car adjacent with Jen and Mary being the ish part of Carish. And finally, Tommy and myself talk all about cars at TFL's Car Chat, where we look into the newest models, talk about what's happening in the world of cars, break down the latest news. All 3 of these podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts, so check them out. I think you'll really enjoy them.